Hey listeners, I'm Taylor McGraw. As I'm recording this, my co-host Sabrina is wrapping up her first semester of college. You got this, Sabrina? Over the course of producing Miseducation, we record lots of material that doesn't always fit into a traditional episode structure. That's what extra credit is for. These are short stories, reflections, or interviews that we really want you to hear. For this first extra credit of season 2, we bring you a story about a major issue in New York City schools that has a way of hiding in plain sight: student homelessness. According to state data released by the group Advocates for Children, last year almost 115,000 students in New York City public schools lived in shelters or were doubled up with friends or relatives. That's a record high, approximately 10% of students in the city. To better understand the challenges homeless students face and how to support them, we sat down with a student named Amya Shaw. She goes by Maya. Maya is now a senior at James Baldwin High School. The story she's about to read first appeared in YC Teen magazine. After she reads the story, stick around for a short post-interview. Here's Maya.
Before I went into the shelter system, I was confident. I wanted to try new things, and I was very loud. No matter what I was saying, I had to be loud about it. There's the ice cream truck. Can we get ice cream, please? I was 9 years old and in 4th grade when I went into the shelter system after my family was evicted from our apartment where I had lived my whole life. The night before we moved into the shelter, my mom, dad, and 2 of my aunts and uncles were packing. I hid under the table and wondered where we were going. I didn't ask because in my household, a child was supposed to be seen but not heard. It wasn't my business why my mom was packing our things up or where we were going because I was a child. My mom eventually brought me upstairs to my friend's apartment so the packing continued without me around. My mom had arranged for me to sleep over, but after we showered and ate dinner, I wanted to go home. When I came back, she took my overnight bag from me and put it down next to the big black plastic garbage bag full of my dolls and dollhouses. The next morning, we didn't go straight to the shelter. We had to go to Prevention Assistance and Temporary Housing, otherwise known as PATH, the homeless intake center, for placement. We weren't placed by the end of the day, so they put us on a school bus that took us to a motel in Queens where we stayed the night. This back and forth went on for a few days. My mother said, "It's only for a little while. We'll be back home soon." And that's what I believed for such a long time. We would be home soon. Little did I know, I'd live in and out of the shelter for the next 5 years. After a few months of living in the shelter, I became closed off. I didn't yell when the ice cream truck came by anymore. I didn't announce my arrival home from school with loud laughs and giggles. I just came back to the shelter and curled up on the bed. There was a bedroom my brother and I slept in, and my parents slept in beds in the living room. I had my toys, but not as many as before because my parents had put most of our belongings in storage. When we couldn't afford to rent the storage space anymore, my toys were sold. I became closed off because in my mind, whether it was true or not, all the other kids at school had a home to go to, and they had things that belonged to them. My bed didn't belong to me. I didn't have a room or a bookshelf or a toy chest. I figured other kids didn't live in one room with their parents and brother. I felt like an outcast. The only comfort I got was from books. I was in love with Harry Potter and the Hunger Games. Reading books was like traveling to another world. Reading kept me occupied when my parents argued relentlessly and helped me block out their loud voices. I also wrote a lot. Being able to put my emotions into words relaxed me. The feeling of the pen gliding smoothly across the paper calmed me down. I was inspired by the Twilight series to write my first book. I adore all the details author Stephanie Meyer puts into the stories. I wrote the draft for my first book in a month. It's a sci-fi story about vampires. I cherish that book. Writing it helped me escape from my real life. Since then, I've written 15 books, all fiction and all in black and white composition books. I plan to publish a few online before I graduate high school. I had always been a hothead, flying off the handle and having a temper, but this side of me got much worse once we became homeless. This anger was partly learned. My parents often yelled at each other. We'd move in and out of shelters and into my aunt's house, and during those times, she and my mom were often at it. So that was all I knew about how to express my anger. This life had made all of us angry people even angrier. In 5th grade, I started getting into fights and arguments with teachers and girls at school. I would go on rampages, vandalizing bulletin boards, tearing apart displays, and cursing at anyone who crossed my path. I despised my teachers for not questioning my behavior. They never thought, I don't think a kid wakes up in the morning intending to ruin everyone's day and tear everything apart. There must be a valid reason as to why a child is acting out like this. I hated to be home and tried to stay out as long as I could. After school, I would hang out in the park with my friends or at my friend's house. Sometimes I would stay out until almost midnight. I wondered if any of the other kids were having as shitty a life as mine. I wondered if anyone was as angry as I was. I am self-aware. I knew what was wrong and why I was acting the way I was acting, but I didn't know how else to deal with it. Finally, I was assigned to Dr. Murrow, a social worker at my school. Whenever my temper got the best of me, she took me to her office to talk. She let me draw, and we ate tea biscuits and delicious muffins while we spoke. Sometimes she would bring me sweaters because she knew how much I loved them. Dr. Murrow didn't give me exercises or coping skills to help me control my anger. She just let me talk. She didn't treat me like a troubled kid with anger problems. She treated me like a regular human being with a lot going on in her life. Just being able to talk to someone who understood me helped reduce my lashing out. But she'd also remind me when I got angry, just walk away, Maya. It's not worth it now, and it won't be worth the consequences in the future. I still recall those words when I'm faced with an altercation today. I was close with my parents and brother before we went into the shelter system, but as time went on, I became distant and angry and wanted nothing to do with them. I didn't want to help my mother clean on Sundays anymore. I didn't want to take trips to the libraries with my dad and read books with him until it closed anymore. I didn't understand why we had to go through this for so long. My parents noticed a change in me and tried to talk to me, but I didn't want to. I had no goals and I criticized myself for it. But now I realize that when you are homeless and don't have a stable living situation, it's hard to focus on yourself or to do anything. My mother kept trying to get a job. My father has been working for the New York City Department of Education since his 20s. He coached girls basketball for 13 years at a high school in Manhattan. He still works there as a school aide. It seems unfair that even with one employed parent and another who did everything that was expected of her to try to gain employment, we were forced to live in shelters and couldn't get a place of our own. In my freshman year of high school, I started to change. I was in a new, healthier environment. The school had supportive teachers and I made more friends. We were living with my aunt and it was a calm period at home. I made the honor roll for the first semester. But soon enough, my home life became chaotic again. My parents fought, my mom and my aunt fought. There was a lot of drinking and yelling. That's when I started smoking. One morning, my mom found weed in my bag, and during a big argument, she threw a frying pan and a pot at me. They didn't hit me, but I was highly upset with her. I went to school for maybe an hour that day, and then left to get high with a friend. After this, I started to skip school a lot to go smoke. When I did go to school, it was only for 1 or 2 classes. But that summer, I began to realize that I had great qualities like my brains, my writing talent, and my self-awareness. I recognized that my anger over being homeless for so long and the constant exposure to my family's violence was legitimate, but I was letting it get in the way of my ability to reach my full potential. I started to write more because I knew it would help me get my anger down on paper rather than out in the world. I felt proud that I had the ability to realize this. Although I couldn't change my parents' and aunt's ways of dealing with their negative emotions, I could try to change my own. By the end of my sophomore year, I had done a whole 180. I started doing things that make me happy. Now I write and read again. I listen to music more often, take walks, and color. I am also bold and loud again. But instead of screaming for the ice cream truck, every once in a while I scream for sushi. Over the last 5 years, I had lived in 4 shelters. 2 years ago, after my aunt asked us to leave for the 3rd time, my mom finally got a job working at a hotel, and we moved in with my dad's aunt, my great aunt. I share a room with my parents and my brother. We all have many clothes and sneakers, and the room is always a mess no matter how many times we clean it. I prefer it to the shelter though. I feel at home there sometimes, but I constantly worry that we will be asked to leave. Still, life is better because now my parents don't argue as much. My mom and her sister also rarely argue anymore. Although I still don't have my own place to live, I am happy, which is something I wished for all those depressing nights in the shelter. I know this is temporary. When I was younger, I thought my homelessness would be permanent. I have often thought about Dr. Murrow over the last 2 years, but I did not feel comfortable reaching out to her. As I was finishing this article, I decided to do so. I emailed her and got a response back a few days later. I was ecstatic to hear from her again. We both agreed that we would meet soon, and I can't wait. It will feel good to see the one person I felt was always there for me during those difficult years. I can't control my homelessness, but I can try to take care of myself.
Once again, that was high school senior Amya Shaw. So, Maya, in your story, you mentioned past frustrations with teachers. How can teachers support students who are in unstable living situations?
They just need to hear them out. I think that's honestly it. I think you'll realize they're not trying to fail. They're not trying to be disrespectful. They just have a lot going on. It gets really stressful when you're unstable in life. You become mentally and emotionally unstable yourself, and it's hard to deal with that. So I think just talk to them, saying good morning to them every morning, saying that you're glad that they're here today, stuff like that. That really goes a long way for some people.
You also mentioned that you had a social worker who really impacted you. There's been a lot of talk recently about the imbalance between school safety agents and counselors and social workers. What are your thoughts on that topic?
I do agree with the fact that there should be more counselors and social workers and therapists in school than school safety agents. The sight of school safety agents in the morning is very triggering for students sometimes, just with things that they've been through in the past. New York City is not the best place running into law enforcement. But when you have social workers and counselors and therapists who students feel comfortable enough talking to just let out their feelings, even if it's just for 15 minutes, that gives them a breather. That gives them a time to take a break and step back from their everyday chaotic life and just focus on themselves.
You were telling me earlier about a protest at your school related to metal detectors. Can you share that story?
So again, I had just gotten to Baldwin, and I had came one morning and there were metal detectors there. And that was one of the prime reasons why I transferred from my old school to Baldwin, was because of the metal detectors. So the students started posting posters on the wall about a protest that was happening. I came into school the next day, and at lunchtime, everybody just left the building. They marched around the block with posters, and they came up with a chant.
We are students, not criminals! We are students!
The process as a whole just meant a lot to me. Just seeing everybody, all of the students come together, to put together this protest and make it happen. And the fact that it was successful, we did it.
For the record, the protest took place December 8th of last year at the Bayard Rustin Educational Complex near Union Square, where James Baldwin is one of several schools in the building. And when I went to visit Maya, there were no metal detectors downstairs. All right, last question, Maya. What advice do you have for other students who are experiencing homelessness?
Just keep going. Just always remind yourself that your situation is temporary until you yourself make it permanent. If you believe deep down in your heart that you can change the way you're living and that you can change your personality and become a bigger, better version of yourself, then you're going to be able to do that. And one day you'll wake up and it won't be so bad anymore. New York City has experienced record levels of homelessness in recent years. According to the advocacy group Coalition for the Homeless, the main reason is a lack of affordable housing. Skyrocketing rents send more and more families into shelters. Like my father, having a job doesn't mean you can escape homelessness. 1/3 of families with children in shelters have a working family member, but they remain unable to find an affordable apartment in the city.
If you want to learn more about the youth homelessness crisis, check out the show notes for links to organizations in New York City who are working to address it. Big thanks to the team at YC Teen Magazine for giving Maya and other students a platform to tell important stories. You can read this one and many more at ycteenmag.org. If Sabrina were here, she'd remind you to wait a second. Here she is.
Don't forget to follow at Miseducation Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and keep reaching out with your comments and feedback. We've really enjoyed your messages.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We've got more in store for you soon. Happy holidays.